impressed and amazed with everything that you've been able to make. Really, it's just incredible. You're just so self-motivated and so creative. And so I was delighted when you told me that you wrote this song. And so I guess for starters, like if you could maybe like summarize the story a little bit for people who are not familiar with it.
Yeah, Carm, thanks so much for asking. I grew up watching Clash of the Titans, and Greek mythology has always appealed to me. You know, like as a kid, I wanted to be Perseus and go off and fight the Kraken and dragons and stuff. And to me, Circe is such a complex character. I resonated with her from the first page, you know, because in that first part of the book, it's like she's kind of an outcast, the way that she describes how she feels in her environment. And I was like, oh my God, I can totally relate to that on so many levels, from my school days to just kind of being a human in the world. And then as I started reading the book, the way that Circe is portrayed in the first person, I can see where, you know, conflict is present in her very early life. She just faces so much adversity, and the way that she deals with it, facing the gods, you know, and like trying to find her place among her father, who's Helios, the sun, and all the Titans, she struggles to find her voice among these people, and her interests are different than theirs. Like what motivates Circe is not the same thing that Oceanos or Helios is driven by, which is like power and prayer from, you know, the minions. And she makes a connection with Prometheus very early on in the story, and he's being punished by Zeus for giving fire to humankind, and Zeus sees this as a threat, right? And so Circe's like, so you gave mortal man, like you talked to them? Like she was so curious and fascinated by them. And so I think that woke something up inside of Circe where she's like, what is this mortal world like? And she has this curiosity about it. And I think that is what appealed to me about her character, was she found something that she could identify with that was so different from the world around her. And she kept pursuing that. And like over the course of the story, she faces several monsters, some of whom she actually created. You know, she finds that she possesses the ability to work with witchcraft and the herbs from the earth that call to her, you know, in a way. Like she feels like the buzz around different herbs, and she listens to that and makes the decision to do something about it, you know, like kind of on her own. Because of that, ends up being exiled to an island. Things for her challenging right off the bat, and then she goes through some traumatizing events. She let it motivate her to become what she was meant to be. And having gone through what she went through, and still being open to the possibility that there are good people in the world, is just such a powerful statement, because she could have very easily just been done with, you know, everybody. Circe is so resilient that she just keeps going, and she finds her calling and makes it a point to pursue that. There's Greek gods and monsters and all of this stuff happening, but also there's like this story about a mother and a sister, and in some ways a villain. And that's how I've heard Madeline Miller describe the character too, the author. And anyway, that's what drew me to the book.
So like it's great, you know. So I'm hearing like it was like there were some components that just resonated with you right out the gate, and then there's just some amazing storytelling and character development that like just really resonated with you as well.
Absolutely.
Totally. So I do audiobooks, so I listened to the book. Did you listen to it or did you read it?
I read it.
Okay, and how long did it take you to read it?
I had a hard time putting it down. I read that book in a couple of weeks.
Awesome.
And then I reread it recently, which is kind of how the lyrics to the song came about.
Okay, so like let's talk about then, like at what point did you decide that you were gonna write a song?
So I was actually just kind of noodling around one night on major seventh chords. And I stumbled upon this chord progression that I don't know, it sounded interesting to me, so I immediately pulled my phone out and I started recording. My electric guitar, it wasn't even plugged in. I'm just like recording that chord progression. And this was years ago. And I ended up using that chord progression for like some YouTube intro videos. And it was just a song that was instrumental at the time. Recently, I switched from Pro Tools to Ableton Live for all audio recording, I imported those old recordings in and just thought like, I wonder if there's something here that I haven't heard in years. And I started messing around and it started to sound a little different, and I re-recorded a lot of the parts. I was just going about my daily business and I kept hearing Circe's story.
Oh my gosh.
in the song, like as it was as an instrumental. And so I just started writing lyrics down wherever I was. I'd be out with my wife and I'd be like, I'm sorry, I gotta jot this down real quick. And I would just take notes. And eventually those turn into the lyrics to the song. And it's all about Circe, you know. It's
I mean, I think like really good writing and really good storytelling takes you somewhere else. And even though you're done with the book, it stays with you, and you think about pieces of it in the background as you're going about your daily life. So it sounds like the story stayed with you. You remembered some like musical components that also then kind of, they all just kind of married together perfectly. Interesting. I was just really curious, like I was like, how did Ben decide to write a song about this? This is amazing. So lyrically, like what, like if we could maybe zoom into maybe some of your favorite lyrics or some lyrics that kind of capture the essence of this character's growth.
Yeah. What you were just describing about the storytelling aspect of the lyrics, I tried to honor that in creating an arc for the level of intensity for the song in particular, because it's a rock song, so it kind of starts out, louder, I would say. The first lyric is shadows all around, the fury knows no bound. In the book, when Prometheus goes through part of his punishment, there's a fury that looks like Medusa, like snakes on her head, and she really doesn't relent. And so I meant that in a literal sense, that fury character just punished Prometheus over and over again. But in a metaphorical sense, the fury that any of us can experience from whatever shapes us as people in the world, that can also have that lingering effect that you were just talking about too, I think, where it stays with you and also helps shape you, as you become the person you're going to be. And so I like that it had sort of the duality in the meaning of that.
Man, that's so deep. It's great. I love it. I mean, I just all the thought and the deliberate. I mean, this is just the first few words of the song. And then it goes into the obsidian part, which is, of course, Helios's halls. He loved the obsidian because when he walked through it, he glows and lights the room up. And when he's not there, it turns into that obsidian darkness where Circe spent a lot of her time, as a kid and kind of growing up. And she's fallen further down into that, and then in the chorus part, it's you made me what I am. He literally is her father, and her mother, who's a nymph, all four of her children had witchcraft capability. And then there's this like part in the book where it's not explicitly expressed that she herself could have witchcraft, but the way that she navigates this world of gods implies that maybe she does have the ability to influence what she wants, influence people to get what she wants, which I thought was really interesting. And so the you made me what I am part, it's that literally, like these two parents of hers made her who she became, but also the experiences on the island and that also shaped who she is. And awesome.
So that's where that came from.
Okay. So okay, got it, the lyrics. Now, musically, tell me a little bit about like just some of the techniques you chose to use, and
Thanks for asking. Oh my gosh, So the intro part, it started with a chord progression, and I heard the bass line next. So I think I write differently than a lot of producers who create music. Like they'll typically start with a beat or a bass line, and then that kind of drives the energy and the pacing of the song. And I do it backwards. I start with the guitar part, and then I add bass and drums later on as it kind of fits the song. Probably because I'm primarily a guitar player, so that's how my brain works. That totally makes sense
for you. And I don't know if there are any rules really on the creative process.
Right?
Yeah.
I think what works best for the song, what serves it. I totally agree with that.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's how it started. And then I do all of this at home. As I find time, I will make myself sit in front of the computer with this like blank slate and just start adding elements to it. And while I'm recording, I'm sort of mixing and just getting levels right so that it's not like this phased process where I record and then I do, it's all kind of like intertwined, and that helps drive some of like the open space in the songs where like, oh, I can see where another part might fit in, or this part is like really colliding with what I want to shine in the song. And it's a way to like emphasize the parts you want to, and maybe pull back a little bit when you want there to be more space, and just make it a little bit more engaging, I hope.
Awesome. Well, I want to talk about your home recording setup.
Okay.
And specifically, there's a part in the song where there's some yelling. And, when I heard that, like, I never even imagined that those sorts of sounds could come out of you. Ben is like one of the nicest guys I know, very mild-mannered, very calm. And I heard this, I was like, is this him? And so, like, I want to know, like, where that came from, and I want to know if the neighbors called the cops.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's true, Carm. That's all me. And luckily for me, my neighbor on the side of the house where I do all my recording, he's 95, his wife is 96. They've been in the house since the 50s, and I don't think that they are that bothered by the noise I make, if they hear it at all. So I got really lucky in terms of the neighboring house. So what I did was I waited until my wife left to go teach a yoga class. I sat and I channeled like what this song was about. I had 2 mics in the room. One that was kind of far away from me. It was an AKG 414. And then I had an SM7, which you'll see in a lot of studios, kind of off to the side, just to have some distance. And I screamed the lyrics as loudly and as passionately and hard as I could, and completely blew my voice out. I couldn't talk for almost 3 days afterwards.
Wow.
Like, I gave it everything I had. Zero technique. Just all the anger and fury, screaming as loud as I could. Those parts are peppered in throughout the song. And I'm so glad that you were able to pick up on that.
I was just very surprised, I just didn't know that you could emit such sounds and channel such rage.
Yeah. I'm trying to be better about the mechanics of singing. I think a lot about the calluses on my fingers, as a guitar player, and the endurance that's required to have 3-hour gigs. And for a singer, how to really utilize the diaphragm, the breath. As much as I appreciate that, it's still hard for me to accomplish that, in a musical way. So I use what I have. And in that moment, I had some anger.
It's great. It's great. So, I mean,
who I am,
the voice is just yet another instrument, and the more you use it, the better you'll get at it. Yeah. And so, now to clarify, did you play each and every sound on this track?
I did. I programmed the drums by hand. So like I made that all using MIDI. So it's like a drum software sound. It's not like a live drum kit, but everything else is all me. The bass parts, every single guitar part, all the vocal layering, everything is all me.
He made everything, people. Everything. That's just incredible. I'm just so amazed, and got mad respect for you.
I got mad respect for you. Carm is also an amazing musician, and just before we started recording, she was playing guitar. And
just a little bit.
when I think about like what I'm trying to accomplish with the music part, this is sincere. I've gone through so many phases as a musician where it's like playing live and then setting up all the audio gear and trying to manage that aspect, and then the teardown, you go back home and you want to make it as a band. That's so much fun. It only works if you, in my opinion, it only really works if you can just like allocate all of your energy to that. When you do that, and you're also working full time and you got all this other stuff going on, it becomes a lot more complicated to do that as well as you want to, I think. So recording at home when I have time and just slowly moving, into better productions over time. Ultimately, I would love to go to a studio and record this stuff. I feel like there's a time where that will make a really big difference. Obviously in the production value, but like the song being out there as a studio produced version versus what I produce without the promotion behind it, without millions of followers. What's the point? That's just money that I could be utilizing on equipment and educating myself on how to develop the language around being a better producer and how to work with other people. So that's kind of where I'm at with it right now in terms of, you know, why I do this at home versus a studio. I know there's better engineers out there.
No, but I mean, like, you know, the beauty of it is that you're out there making stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you have the courage to do that and put yourself out there. And, like, who cares if it's not the most polished, perfect thing? I mean, I think a lot of music is better in its raw form anyways.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I think that's what appealed to me in the early 2000s and the late 90s. You know, Radiohead, Pablo Honey. I mean, that's just amps, guitars, and their youthful rage.
I mean, when you think of a lot of bands, too, their best albums were the earlier ones, you know, before they got the production budget, you know, in part because they're hungrier. But there's just something really beautiful to that, like, imperfect sound. So
and the rawness.
Yeah. So I think what you created is amazing.
Oh, thanks for saying that. Here's to hoping for a band life someday. All right, thanks so much for spending time with me on this, Carm.
Bye.
Bye.